Hello and welcome back to Mythic Knowledge, the show where I take a look at Mythic Magic the Gathering cards and tell you are they any good in the Legacy format or not. What is our first card of the day? It is a Johnny, Adversary of Tyrants. A Johnny, Adversary of Tyrants is 2 and double white for a legendary Planeswalker, a Johnny. You can +1 him to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. -2 him to return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Or -7, you get an emblem with at the beginning of your end step, create 3 1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink. And he starts with loyalty 4. Johnny's okay. I mean, none of these abilities are that bad, but I don't know. Where are you going to put it in your legacy deck, right? Like which legacy deck does it go into? I don't know. I don't play legacy. This, as you might have caught on, is an April Fool's joke. Of course, we are common knowledge. We're gonna take a look at common cards. I seriously don't know anything about legacy. There's too many cards. There's too many cards for legacy. Let's just stick with all the common ones. How's that sound? Let's get into it and do it for real this time. Happy April 1st, I guess. And let's see what we got. We have Fleet Feather Sandals, which is 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has Flying and Haste, and it equips for 2. Flying and Haste, good abilities. Not good enough that I think you want to pay 4 mana to give one of your creatures this ability, and then have to continually pay 2 mana to give it to another creature and another creature, which you probably will want to do since Haste is one of those abilities, and Haste kind of only matters the first turn that a creature's in, unless you're playing against Gingerbrute decks, which is possible. I have a deck or two with Gingerbrute in it, so sweet tech. But no, this is not particularly good. Also, not giving a power and toughness boost is a little bit rough when you're putting this much mana in here. Flying and Haste, good abilities, but not something that's going to be useful for you in Pauper. Score-wise, I didn't give a Johnny a score. Oh, that's too bad. What would we give a Johnny in the Legacy format? I don't know. A 3.2. all my legacy players out there can tell me if 3.2 is right for a Johnny. But for Fleet Feather Sandals, I'm thinking more like a 1.6, maybe. I don't know if you can hear. There's some construction going on my neighbor's house right next to me, but I don't think that's coming through. All right, let's move on to our next card. It's Rampaging Classmate. Spider-Man card. Spider-Man Eternal card. Where the hell did this come from? What is this? Do I know what the Spider-Man Eternal set is? Is this... There wasn't a... I don't know if I know what these are. Was there a command? No, there wasn't. No, there's only 26 cards. Where? I remember the... I don't know. Why? Oh, sometimes Magic makes me very tired. Anyway, let's also get rid of this Johnny here. Rampaging Classmate is 2 and a red for a 3/2 Lizard Berserker, and whenever this creature attacks, it gets +1/+0 until the end of turn for each other attacking creature. So he's kind of, if you really squint, this is a Leonardo, Big Brother. But it's also not anywhere near as good as that because it doesn't have the sneak. And all the other creatures have to be attacking. It's not just all the other creatures you control. So, this is bad. This is pretty bad. I'm glad it's from a set, from a thing of cards that Wizards is going to try to sell you. Not legal and standard. What are these cards for? I don't know. But this one I would say is not. For Pauper, I'm going to give this a 2.3 because it does boost its own power. That's something, but I don't understand Magic sometimes. Next card is Mardu War Shrieker. For 3 and a red, you get a 3/3 Orc Shaman with Raid. When this creature enters, if you attack this turn, add Mardu mana. Red, white, and black. So you get a Hill Giant, you know, a 4 mana 3/3. But this one at least pays you back 3 and mana fixes you if you don't have those colors specifically. You know, you could just have all red mana or red and colorless mana, and now you're able to generate white and black just for that turn. But, and not even for that turn, for that phase of your turn. But still, that's kind of interesting. I do like cards that end up paying back. You know, we get oh god, what's its burning tree emissary, yeah. That's a Pauper card. Yeah, of course. That one pays itself back, but it pays all of itself back. And potentially mana fixes you since both of these are hybrid. This guy doesn't pay you back the full thing, so you'd have to, you know, there's cost reducers. There's Ruby Storm stuff that you could do to reduce your red costs. I'm working really hard to try to make this card good, and I don't think this card is good. You shouldn't just play Hill Giants, even if they pay you back 3/4 of their mana cost. I feel pretty confident in saying that we should not be playing Hill Giants these days in 2026. So why don't we give this thing a... I'm going to give it a 2.1 and just move on. What do we have next? It is Break the Spell from Wilds of Eldraine. It's a single white mana for an instant. Destroy target enchantment. If a permanent you controlled or a token was destroyed this way, you draw a card. Interesting. You know, a 1 mana instant draw spell for white, in a way. But also Demystify, which is not a very good card, but it looks cool. Demystify. Maybe. Well, I mean, that version's all right, but I mean the Onslaught one, of course. I do like these kind of wicker clerics from Onslaught. That's a fun time for me. Anyway, being able to destroy an enchantment at instant speed is fine. You know, you go up against Bogle's decks potentially, and a couple other White Heroic and some other ones that will use enchantments, but for the most part, I don't think you're too worried about this. It is an interesting way of drawing cards, but then you have to be playing enchantments yourself. So if you're a Bogle's deck, do you have enchantments that you are willing to get rid of? I don't think you are. I think all the enchantments that are in that deck are pretty important to you. And kind of the same with Mono White Heroic. You don't want to get rid of your Ethereal Armor to draw a card, because one of the best cards you can draw is Ethereal Armor. Yeah, this isn't... I mean, this makes a lot more sense in Wilds of Eldraine, where they had the roll tokens. And I suppose there are ways that you can get roll tokens in the Pauper format as well, and this becomes a little bit more useful that way. But outside of maybe some enchantment creatures that you wouldn't mind dying, I don't think this is worth the cost. Now, if this said destroy target artifact, then you could destroy your blood tokens or something like that. I guess that wouldn't really make a difference with blood token, right? Because it would be just the same as discarding this. But you'd get your clue token for a mana faster or mana cheaper. With artifacts, maybe you could do something with this. With enchantments, I don't really think there's much of anything you can do. Well, I take that back. You know what? Hopeless Nightmare, also in Wilds of Eldraine. This does have when it's put in the graveyard effect. So yeah, you'd get the value of playing this first, and then you'd also get the value by destroying it. Something you would have been able to do in Wilds of Eldraine Standard or Wilds of Eldraine Limited, because both of those cards show up there. So I suppose, but I think if you're playing Hopeless Nightmare, you probably want to blink and bounce it a bunch. And the idea of destroying it to just draw a card is maybe not so good. Although, you trigger this first, you scry 2, and then you draw the card off this. So it's kind of like a better Lembas in that way. This is again, I'm stretching really hard for a card that doesn't really deserve it. I think it's okay. It's certainly better than a Demystify, but we also don't play Demystify. I'm going to give this thing a 2.0. I'm just going to give it a 2. And what will our next card be? It's Whispering Shade. I'm almost positive we've done Whispering Shade before. A very cool looking card that has never gotten more than one printing, which is a little interesting. I mean, you see why. It's we don't really do land walk abilities anymore in Wizards doesn't do land walk abilities that much more in sets. Certainly not standard legal sets, and this was kind of just a play off of some of those old cards that would do this. What do you call that effect? It's not fire breathing because that's red and 1 and 0, but the black 1/1, that kind of shade effect that you've seen on other shades as well. I think Frozen Shade was maybe the first one that had it. Anyway, Whispering Shade has really cool art. I'm pretty positive we've done it before, but on the off chance that we haven't, I guess I'm not reading it all completely, but I'm kind of hedging my bets both ways, and I'll give this thing like a 2.7 or something, but we won't count that one. Kitsune Bone Setter. All right, Kamigawa card, even if it's Saviors of Kamigawa, which is not a good set. Kitsune Bone Setter is 2 and a white for a 0/1 Fox Cleric. You can tap it to prevent the next 3 damage that would be dealt to target creature this turn. Activate only if you have more cards in hand than each opponent. Oof, that's not very good. You're paying 3 mana for a 0/1. That's already really bad. And being able to prevent 3 damage, okay, so it's in a way, this is kind of a 0/4. Well, a 0, yeah, I get kind of a 0/4. You could block a guy and then tap this and prevent 3 of the damage to this guy, and then block the rest of it with your 0/1. It's still bad. These effects are. We don't do these effects that much in Magic anymore. I think Mark Rosewater Wizards generally has said, "Hey, these effects just slow down the game and aren't really fun to play against or play with." So we've really slowed down on using them, and that's true. It does grind games to kind of a halt. And this one having that extra hoop to jump through that you have to have more cards in your hand, that's very much a Saviors of Kamigawa kind of thing. I don't think this effect is worth the hoop to jump through. I don't think this body is good enough. This is a really bad card all around. I'm gonna give it a 1.2, maybe even a 1.1. Yeah, let's go down to 1.1. I love Kamigawa, and I specifically like the Kitsune. I think the Kitsune are really cool in Kamigawa, but not this one. This is a bad one. Oh, Bubbling Beebles is 4 and a blue for a 3/3 Beeble creature. This creature can't be blocked as long as defending player controls an enchantment. God, just look at it. Just look at it. It's so majestic. A beautiful Magic card. Not a good one. Definitely not a good one, but a beautiful Magic card. A 10 in my heart, but how far could I actually go and not make it seem better than it is? This is a 1. It's just a 1. It's really poor. Your opponent specifically has to be playing enchantments. There are so many Pauper decks that aren't playing enchantments at all, and this becomes even worse than a Hill Giant. You know, we just talked about Hill Giants being 4 mana 3/3s. This is a 5 mana 3/3. Whew, that's so bad. And the unblockability is cool, but the activation for that is so steep. You know, if again we're talking about enchantments versus artifacts. If it said artifact, it would still be a bad card. Don't get me wrong, but if it said artifact instead of enchantment, then there are so many more artifacts flying around the Pauper format that you would probably get the unblockability to work more often than not. With enchantments, you have a scant few decks that really show up in the meta at all. So you're never getting that. And even if you did, it's 5 mana 3/3. This card sucks. It's a 1. But also, look at it. Okay. Creeping Peeper is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 eye. You can tap it to add blue, but spend this mana only to cast an enchantment spell, unlock a door, or turn a permanent face up. Yeah, again, like we're running into a lot of enchantment things that just don't work all that well in Pauper. This is the better of any of the ones that we've seen so far. It is a mana dork in that way. I do like that Wizards is starting to explore mana dorks in different colors. We've seen a couple in red in the last handful of sets, and we've seen a handful of blue ones too that are conditional. You know, Land of War Elves will just give you the green mana, but Creeping Peeper or the Oaken Siren, that's another one. They'll tap to add a blue, but only for, you know, this one is only for enchantments, unlocking or turning your permanent face up. Oaken Siren is only for artifacts or activation of artifacts, I believe. So having those kind of conditional ones is interesting. I think it's cool to see ramp show up in more colors, even though it's conditional. That being said, I don't think Creeping Peeper is all that great. This isn't the right colors for most of the enchantment style decks that you'd want to play in Pauper. And it's not a particularly great body. You know, a 2/1 for 2 mana is very easy to just pick off the board and not give it a second thought. I think you can do better with that slot. Although, are there like some big eye creatures that say, "Oh, non-eyes can't attack," or your creatures that are non-eyes can't attack? And this guy's an eye, so he can still attack. Look at that! Look at that sweet tech. It's pretty bad. Just for being the mana dork that does help out, I will end up giving it something like a 2.5. And it could even be something that gets better in the future as more enchantment heavy decks show up in the Pauper format. And potentially blue gets splashed or is like a main color in those decks. Maybe if we get there, maybe if an Azorius enchantments deck that was in standard for a little bit, especially when Duskmourn first came out, maybe if that trickles down to Pauper at some point, Creeping Peeper might be something that we look at a little bit more fondly. But right now, no, not particularly good. But 2.5 for where it could go. Ifara's Dispersal is 2 and a blue for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets an attacking creature. Return target creature to its owner's hand, and you surveil 2. I have seen this do some work. I saw it do some work in Standard back in its day in March of the Machine times. You know, it is just kind of an unsummon in that way, because if it's an attacking creature, it reduces the cost to unsummon cost, which is okay. But then you get the extra the extra bonus from the surveil, and that's kind of cool. You know, you get better than an unsummon in particular situations. You could even use this to bounce your own guys. You probably wouldn't want to do that as much, but it is targets an attacking creature, so it doesn't have to. You could do this on your attack phase. You attack, and then you immediately play this to bounce your guy before they are. Well, I guess you can do it even before damage. Like you can attack. They can choose which things they block. Then you play this before damage happens to save a guy who does get blocked. That's kind of interesting. You know, could fairies do something with this where you swing in with a bunch of guys, you ninjutsu the one that gets through, you bounce back the one that would die from being blocked, and then you get to surveil too, and then you get to play it again. You know, maybe that's something you can do with your your spell setter sprite. That's the name I'm looking for. Like there's cool stuff you can do here. I think I would just take unsummon more over any of these options, over any of these situations, where I could just use it whenever I needed to and only pay the 1. And the Surveil 2 is nice, but I don't really need it. And also, you don't even play Unsummon anymore because you have Bounce Off? Yeah, Bounce Off, which is just a strictly better Unsummon because it also works on vehicles now. That's really sad. Why you power crept Unsummon? You shouldn't be able to do that. but we have what we have with Bounce Off. So, and Bounce Off doesn't really see any play in the Pauper format either, which is a little bit sad. I think Unsummon effects are really cool and can be extremely useful in a ton of different situations. And we just don't use them very much. We'd prefer to just remove things, which I get. Anyway, as far as dispersal, it's all right. It's all right, but I think I'd play the Unsummons, the Bounce Offs instead. So let's go with a 2.6. No, it could be better than that. It can be better than that. I'll give this a 2.9. As I really do think bounce effects can be cool. Bounce an opponent's attacking creature. They lose some tempo. You get some card selection, maybe even card advantage if you're doing a graveyard strategy. Yeah. It's okay. What do we got next? Shadow Beast Sighting is 3 and a green for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 green beast creature token. It also has flashback for 6 and a green. It's Roar of the Worm, right? It's like opposite Roar of the Worm, right? Because this is 4 and then it's 7, and this is 7 and then it's 4. That's fun. That's a fun idea. But this makes a 6/6, where this makes 4/4. So you can see, like, because the idea here is that you can play this from your hand for cheaper, so you probably want the creature to be smaller, and then the flashback can be bigger in case it gets milled in, where Roar of the Worm is the opposite. You are looking to try to mill it into your graveyard or get it into your graveyard in some other form or fashion, and then you get the cheaper 6/6. Roar of the Worm is Roar of the Worm is not Pauper playable, sadly. God, that is sad. It'd be really cool if Roar of the Worm was in Pauper. But Shadow Beast Sighting is, and I don't think it's very good. 4 mana 4/4 is a lot to ask, and the decks that, dredge decks and things like that are putting cards into their graveyards pretty consistently. Yes, you can use the flashback, but it's very expensive. And most of those decks would prefer just a big creature to be in their graveyard instead that they can use Exhume on. So with all that knowledge, I don't think this card is particularly useful for really any deck. I'm trying to... Winding Ways and Lead the Stampedes want you to play more creatures in your deck, so green decks will generally play more creatures. I'm sure there are some cards that... In green? Maybe not. I'm sure there are some cards that care more about finding non-creature cards in your library, whether through tutoring kind of effects or things that you can bring back from a graveyard. But most of the green cards, are the Malevolent Rumble and things like that. They're pulling back permanents from your graveyard. And again, this wouldn't work with that. So I think, if this card was red or blue, colors that care much more about instants and sorceries, we could probably have a little bit more conversation about where this might fit. But in green, I just don't think it's as useful. And in red and blue, it probably wouldn't work because the creature itself is a weird... I don't know. It could work in red and blue, I suppose. But in green, nah. I'd rather play so many other cards for 4 mana in green. So we'll go with a 1.8 maybe. I really don't like it. Even though it is technically card advantage because you get 2 activations out of the deal, I still don't love it. Here we go. It is Cytospawn Shambler for 6 and a green. 7 whole mana. You get a 0/0 elemental mutant with Graft 6. This creature enters with 6 +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever another creature enters, you may move a +1/+1 counter from this creature onto it. And for a green, target creature with a +1/+1 counter on it gains trample until end of turn. Graft is a cool ability, a Simic ability that we saw in Dissension, when Ravnica was first coming out. And I think graft is really neat, especially that you can distribute them to your opponents too. And this card doesn't really get any better from that happening. But think about commander games or something where you could give an opponent a +1/+1 encounter and do some politics stuff. You can't attack me with that. I also just like, there's plenty of +1/+1 encounter stuff going on in commander anyway. So somebody might have some guy with a +1/+1 encounter on it, and you can use your ability here to give that guy trample and maybe make a little bit of an alliance. Attack that guy, I'll give you trample. That's cool. But it's also nice to make +1/+1 strategies work for your own decks, where you're putting, this guy's distributing those 1/1 counters to your other creatures, giving them a little bit more value, a little bit more oomph when they come into play. Those can all be good things. There's a rare blue card from Dissension that will allow you to steal creatures with +1/+1 counters on them, and it has graft. So the idea is that you would put the 1/1 counter, you'd graft on the 1/1 counter from your guy into their guy, and then you'd steal them. And I think that's really cool. But this card, not amazing. Costs so much. You don't even get a good rate on it. It's a 7 mana 6/6. That's not good. Yeah, that's not particularly good at all. And I don't think this ability is all that great. We have creatures in Pauper. Yeah, we have creatures in Pauper that just say, without the activation, hey, creatures with +1/+1 counters on them have trample. Just have it. And I think those are better options than Cytospawn. I just don't think I don't know where you're putting this. The only deck that conceivably can, I guess there's 2 decks that conceivably can play this, and that's some Gruul ramp stuff. And I don't think you'd do that because this is more expensive than the boarding parties and the Annoyed Altasaurs that you're playing. Well, it's just as expensive as the Annoyed Altasaur, but you're not cascading into this thing, so it's not very useful in those decks. And the Monstertron decks that specifically splash green or play green, and same kind of deal. I guess the Maelstrom Colossus does cascade into this guy. I don't think you'd feel very good about that happening. Although it's interesting because of the way the stack works with Cascade, you play your Maelstrom Colossus, it cascades. It cascades into this guy. This guy gets played first, and then the Maelstrom Colossus comes into play. And when that happens, you could graft onto the Colossus immediately. That's fun. That's a fun idea. But that is only like a fun idea and not actually very useful in practice. So I think we can pretty safely give this a bad score of something like a 1.4. And most of that is just how expensive this card is. You're never going to have the mana to cast this thing. It's going to rot in your hand all the time. All the time. Although, I mean, trying to think, there's some like white cards, right, that care about the power of a creature. So maybe you can go if you mill this into your yard, you can bring back creature power 2 or less to the battlefield. Maybe you get into some Selesnya territory. It's still bad. I'm going to keep my same score. Yeah, I don't particularly like this card at all. Silver Drake, though, is 1 Azorius, white and blue, for a 3/3 Drake with flying. And when this creature enters, return a white or blue creature you control to its owner's hand. That's also pretty bad. This is like a core Skyfisher that is worse. It's just worse core Skyfisher in so many ways. It does have a power more than Skyfisher, okay, but it costs 1 more than Skyfisher. It's got more difficult pips, more required pips to be able to cast it, and it has to return a white or blue creature. So you can't even do funky enchantment bouncing or artifact bouncing with this. It has to be a creature. It's just really limited in what it can do. And there's a whole cycle of these from Plane Shift, cards that you play and then have to return a creature of the colors that it used to cast it to bring it back. So And if you have no other creatures, when you cast this, you have to bounce itself. It has to just bounce itself back to your hand because it is a white or blue creature you control. So it's not particular. You can make it work. You can make it work by having other ETBs and things like that you can bounce around the same way that you do with Core Skyfisher and Glinthawk and those bouncy decks, Dreamstalker. But this is so limited, and you're not getting any real value out of it. A 3-mana 3/3, even that flies. I don't think you're getting the value that you want out of that card. So play Core Skyfisher instead. That's really all I can tell you. That's just a much better use of your cards in your deck. So let's give this guy a 1.4, and we'll do a bonus card and get the hell out of here. What do you say? Our bonus card is Scrapwork Rager. It's a 2/2 artifact creature, Phyrexian Horror. And when this creature enters, you draw a card and lose a life. It also has Unearth for 3 and a black. So you pay 3 and a black and return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, and you exile it at the beginning of your next end step, or if it would leave the battlefield. Unearth only as a sorcery. So, I mean, obviously, this thing is going for a Phyrexian Rager, which draws you a card and loses you a life when it comes into play and is a 2/2. This thing costs 3, though. This guy costs 4. So in a way, we got worse. The Unearth ability, though, allows you to get it back, so you get to do this kind of twice. And that's okay. And again, dredge decks might throw this into the graveyard early, and then you can unearth them later, and you get that card. I didn't really like Phyrexian Rager all that much either, though. A 4-mana 2/2 here that draws you a card and loses you a life. Like, don't forget, yes, life's a resource, but you don't need to just give it away like this. I don't know if a 4-mana 2/2, especially if you use it twice and you lose 2 life off of it, that's 10% of your life total right there. I don't know. I don't know about that. I like the nostalgia play, but I don't particularly like the card. Let's go with something like a 2.3. It does draw you cards. Can draw you 2. Or you can blink it or bounce it. It's not good. Don't worry about it. Don't think about this card. I will not be thinking about this card anymore. We will catch you next time.